Now, I found this post to be extremely interesting and at the same time enlightening. It comes from a writer and an academic. As you can see, he's a professor at a university, an author of a book called The Divide and Less is More. Talks about global inequality, political economy, and ecological economics. And the reason it's enlightening is because we get to see one of the academics, the experts, the social engineers that are basically explaining why they're supporting communism and pretty much why they hate you. So, in his words, he dislikes capitalism, which, by the way, few people know. It's a word attributed by Marxists. Like, capitalism as a system is not a word coined by capitalists, it's a word coined by Marxists. What they're complaining about is free markets. What they're complaining about is free will, allowing individuals to decide what's best for themselves, right? So communists don't like that because, as this person points out, is that there is no vision for social progress, right? Like if we allow people to think for themselves and operate by themselves, then we don't achieve social progress. There's no commitment to improving human welfare or ecology. All we get is the chaos of profit-oriented production and accumulation as the world burns around us, right? So like capitalist society burned the world. It's interesting how when you look at human history, you notice that the communist societies are the ones that actually pollute more. And it's also interesting to see how the Soviet Union managed to collapse economically while the greedy corporation in America managed to flourish. And the cope is that, well, the Soviet Union wasn't communist. Bullshit. It absolutely was. There was a complete abolition of private property. I don't know how many Americans are aware what communism actually was, because a lot of Americans use communism as an insult, but they probably are not aware just how things worked in the Soviet Union. So if you wanted to have a fence painted and you asked your neighbor, hey, can you paint my fence, and in exchange I will pay you a sum, you would commit a crime in the Soviet Union. Like, do you understand this? Like, you weren't allowed to do this. The correct way to do it is, if you wanted to be a painter, you had to sign up for the government, and now you're working inside the government. And when you want a fence painted, you have to petition the government, and they send a painter for you. Like there is no liberal profession. You cannot work outside the government. The government controls everything, right? So to say that the Soviet Union wasn't communist is bullshit. It 100% was. Now, it didn't achieve the goals of communism, but it implemented the methods that should have produced communism. To say that the Soviet Union wasn't communism is to say that the Aztecs weren't performing real human sacrifices because the gods haven't responded. And there is a reason why the economy in the Soviet Union failed while the economy in the United States was flourishing. And the reason is that a person who owns his own business has an incentive for that business to be successful. And more than that, it knows the business better than anyone else because it's his business, right? And so if you look at the way things were working in the Soviet Union, you still have a person in charge of every business, but it's not his business. He doesn't get a percentage of the profits. And so if the employee is slacking, if the employee is rude to the customer, if the employee is stealing stuff from the business, the person in charge doesn't give a fuck. There was even this saying, it's like, well, he's not stealing from my mother, right? So you turn a blind eye to the employee stealing. Maybe you steal something yourself and the employee turns a blind eye to you. People are rude to the customers on a daily basis because, like, at the end of the day, the customer isn't the one paying you, it's the government. You're not paid based on how much you're selling. And oftentimes, like, the government would just send more people because everyone needed to have a job, right? Like, everyone needed to work. And the expression, he was hired to cut leaves for the dogs, existed. As in, you're paid to do nothing. Like, that is an abysmal amount of waste. And even the person, right, to cut leaves for the dogs, like, he is doing a job. He is actually wasting energy. He's getting paid, but he's contributing nothing for society. The job is completely useless. It serves absolutely no purpose. And it's dehumanizing. It's not fulfilling. And so that's what communism is. And the reason it collapses is like the concept of central planning. Like, in a nation, there are so many moving pieces that no matter how smart the person at the top is, he can't adequately micromanage everything. And this is what China figured out. I mean, they're communists, right? So they switched over to a capitalist system because even they realized, okay, we're creating famines if we're micromanaging everything. We don't actually know better than the person on the ground who actually has his business. And this is the fart-sniffing academics. This is where they come in. They think because they have a diploma, they're smarter than everyone. And they know better than everyone. And the reality is, like, if you put all of these academics on an island, chances are they're probably going to starve to death. But if you take some peasants and you put them on an island, chances are they'll figure out how to survive. Like, a society can unironically function without the academics, but it can't function with the people that without the people that are growing food. And you get to notice, like, the level of disdain for the farmer, which is, like, mind-blowing. Especially in the European Union, right? Like fuck the people who make our food seems to be the mantra. And they keep hurting them with various ecological, bureaucratic legislation, forcing them to constantly struggle in order to grow people's food, fucking with them when it comes to taxes. Like in the UK, they're passing a new tax for farmers regarding inheritance and shit. Is that progress? Like, is that how we advance as a society? Is that normal? And you don't see these academics calling out those tactics. No, not at all. They love it. Progress as a society. You want progress as a society? Start a new world war. No, seriously, you know, like, it's not capitalism that created the best inventions. It's not communism that created the best inventions. No, warfare creates the best inventions. It's out of necessity. Like, during war, all of a sudden, bureaucracy is cut. It doesn't, like, safetyism is cut. All the red tape disappears. It's like, just make something that works, because otherwise the enemies make it faster, right? So, like, if your goal is to achieve societal progress, you want warfare. If you want environmentalism, well, more people die in a war than anything else. So, like, less carbon footprint. There you go. Where am I wrong? Like, contradict me. But no, like, the whole thing, it's so annoying, right? It's like these academics, just because, like, they get a diploma, they think they should be placed in charge of society. They think they should be God. Like, they know better than everyone else. And I bet, like, in a communist system, they don't view themselves at the bottom. Like, they don't view themselves as the pleb. Like, they want equality, but they want to govern. Like, they want to be the expert that basically goes to the dear leader and justify why Lysenkoism is a good tactic. You know, because the Soviet Union had the experts. So did the Mao from China. And what did the experts say? They said, yeah, if we manage to kill all the sparrows, then we're going to have better crops. Because it makes sense, right? I mean, the sparrows eat the crops. So if you don't have sparrows, then all of a sudden you're going to have more crops. Like 1 + 1 = 2. The same experts that said diversity is good for business. Do you guys remember that shit? Yeah, diversity is excellent for business. Ask Hollywood how's it going and the video gaming industry in the West. I mean, the experts came up with that. And so going back to the sparrows, well, they did kill them. And what ends up happening was a plague of locusts. Oh, turns out that the sparrows were eating the locusts. Turns out that the locusts actually eat more grain than the sparrows. Because the sparrows eat the locusts and the grain. But the locusts only eat the grain. And there's more locusts than there are sparrows. And so they created a famine. But, you know, and by the way, what's interesting is that there is no accountability for the experts. Did you notice that shit? Like, if you're a doctor and you botch a surgery, you get a lawsuit. You can lose your medical license. If you're an engineer and you lead to the collapse of a bridge, like your plans were bad, the bridge collapses, people die, you go to prison. If you're an expert, if you're an academic, and you say something monumentally stupid that ends up hurting an entire civilization or ruins an economy, no consequences. The best way to listen to academics is to go back to 5 years in the past and listen to the bullshit they were saying and see how many of their predictions come true, how many of the things that they promised and they applied end up in massive failure. You know, go to all the academics that said representation and diversity is important in media. See how those companies that implemented those tactics did before and did after. You know, a little bit of accountability. And then see just how bad their predictions are and wonder, like, why is society lifting them on a fucking pedestal? I would rather lift a trucker on a pedestal than an academic. There is so much unjustifiable prestige for these people, it's unfucking real. Because I keep seeing this on the internet, right? Like, there was a time during COVID where a trucker was getting like $6,000 a month. And women were still saying, nah, I wouldn't date you because you're a trucker, right? Like, there's not enough prestige, basically. But an academic that does only bad predictions, oh, that has prestige, so that's good person. Even if they earn less than $6,000. And speaking of earning, you know, how do these fuckers manage to talk about capitalism when the United States academia is being run like a for-profit corporation? They are milking their students like no tomorrow. There is no justification why the prices in the United States in the academia are as high as the way they are. Compared to a European academic, they should fucking be ashamed. These people talk about communism while leeching off the taxpayer money and leeching off student debt. And they have the balls to talk about equality and stuff. But it's good that people call them out. Like, I'm looking at Twitter, you know, like, this got 129,000 views. Almost overwhelmingly negative comments. And it's a good thing, you know. It's unfortunately, as I mentioned, that there's no accountability for what the academics say. So in other words, this is why communism doesn't work, because you have people in power that have no accountability for their decisions. No matter how bad it is for society, no matter how bad things are, they never get fired, they never get imprisoned, like nothing bad happens to them. Let me know what you guys think, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.